we're just going to look at two of the most common graphs for categorical data. So we looked at frequency tables in the last video, but if we're looking at like pictures, we're mostly just going to be looking at bar graphs and pie charts. So a bar graph is literally just bars where the heights are telling us how often a particular category is occurring. And remember, this is only going to be appropriate for categorical data. When we get to the next section and talk about histograms that look similar, I'll explain how they're a little bit different. Okay, so we're looking at the favorite color of students, right? And we've got this red, yellow, blue, and green bars here, right? These don't have to be different colors, of course. What is always going to be consistent from every single one of these is the heights are telling us how commonly these categories are occurring. Now over here we see for our vertical axis we've got the number of students, right? So we absolutely could be representing this as counts or frequencies, or it could also be percentages. Those are both completely valid things to do with these bar charts. I'm going to have you notice just one thing real quick though before I move on, because this is actually fairly straightforward. And that is that these bars are actually separated, okay? There's a space between each one of the bars. That is to clue us in right now that this is a bar graph for categorical data. You will always see that with bar graphs, or sometimes called bar charts. It's the same thing. All right, so just to make sure we're clear on all of this, right? For green right here, this last bar, there are 15 total students that prefer green, and there's 5 total students that prefer yellow, the second bar, which means there's 3 times as many students that prefer green over yellow, right? 15 is 3 times higher than 5. So these are fairly straightforward to interpret, and that's kind of why we use them so much. Pie charts are also something I'm sure you've seen before. These are just circles where we've cut out wedges of the circle that describe how much of the total are represented by that particular group. So generally speaking, these are represented with percentages. Sometimes you'll see counts, but realistically, we most often see percentages attached with these. So this is just people's favorite type of movie, right? And it says sci-fi, there's 4 answers, which is 20% of people. In this particular case, we have counts and percentages. It's kind of unusual, but it's perfectly fine. Okay, so here the idea is I can immediately look at this and see that this red portion on the bottom left here is going to be the biggest piece of this pie. So this is the most common response. And I can see that the smallest wedge of the pie here is the least common response, which is drama. Okay, so that's all that we're really looking from these, is just to be able to tell, like, relatively speaking, how often these different categories are occurring. And either bar charts or pie charts are completely reasonable if we want a physical graph, and frequency tables are also great. All of those are great for categorical data. They should only be used, generally speaking, for categorical data. And I would just add on to this one little thing, which is that in general, when we're making pie charts, we want to only make these when we've got a fairly small number of categories, right? If I were trying to make a graph of what people are majoring in college, right? I mean, we've got like 100 majors here at Casper College. This would have 100 little slices in it. It would be a nightmare to try to interpret anything. We might want to go for either a big bar chart or a frequency table. Those would be more reasonable for that. Pie charts are really for, you know, maybe 10 or less categories. It's just a rough rule of thumb.